today we're going to explore what happens to some words when we add the ER suffix. So some things you might already know about the ER suffix is that you already know that it comes at the end of words. It can also be called an inflectional ending, and that it can change the meaning of a word because by having the meaning of more, right? Like fast and faster, right? Slow and slower. You might also know that sometimes adding the ER suffix to a root word means we have to change the spelling of a word a little bit. So we see this, for example, in words like happy that end in a Y. To make it happier, we have to drop the Y and add an I before we add that ER. So today we're going to explore another spelling change that might happen with the ER suffix. So we're going to go back to a message that I shared with you before, and we're going to look at this pattern again in this message in a different word. So let me start off by sharing the message with you. Dear friends, this morning I went for my walk earlier than normal. The sun glistened on the grass that was wetter with the morning dew than usual. I walked so long that I got home later than I had planned. So we had talked the other day about earlier and what happens with words that end in that Y. Today what I want to do is I want to talk with you about a spelling change that happens sometimes when we have to double the last letter of a word before we add ER, like we see in the word wetter. So when I was on my walk the other day, the grass was so wet with dew, I think because I was out earlier than normal, that it was wetter. It was more wet than it usually was. So we know that sometimes when words end in a Y, we have to drop the Y and add an I before we can add ER. Another thing that happens when we add the ER suffix is if we have a word that has one syllable, like wet is one syllable, one vowel, and the word ends in one consonant, we have to double that last consonant before we add ER. So wet becomes wetter with the double T. And really the reason we do this is because if we didn't, what we would have in the middle of that word is what we call a consonant vowel silent E pattern. And when we know we have silent E, it's going to make that vowel long. So that would be wheater. That does not sound right. So the reason we add that consonant is so we can kind of keep the word sounding right for us. So this is what we're going to explore today. We're going to explore what happens when you add ER to a root word that has one syllable, one vowel, and one consonant. So let's play with that a little bit. So I'm going to go back to the chart that we started the other day. We're going to continue adding our new thinking to it. Okay. So this is when we have to double consonants. So when we have a word where the root word is one syllable, like wet, has one vowel, and ends in one consonant, the T, we double that final consonant before we add the ER. So sometimes people might call this, you might hear people call this the 1-1-1 rule. And if that helps you to think about this, that's fine, right? One syllable, one vowel, ends in one consonant, means you double that last consonant. So wet becomes wetter. So let's explore this and it's a few words you might use in your writing. Let me add wet and wetter to our double consonant part of our chart. Wet and wetter, okay? Let's take a look at the word big. You might use this word a lot in your writing, right? Big. I got a big basket of apples when I went to the farmer's market. Big. So what do you notice about the word big? Right? You might notice it has one syllable, big. It has one vowel, right? And it ends in one consonant. So when that happens, if I want to turn big into bigger, like I got an even bigger basket of pears than I did of apples. There were so many pears. I got a bigger basket. How would I turn big into bigger? Right, I would have to double that G. Right, I would double the G before I added the ER. Because look, if I didn't, I would end up saying bigger. What? That doesn't even sound right. Bigger. So this would be an example of a word that has that 1-1-1. One syllable, big. One vowel, I. One consonant, G. So I'm going to double the last consonant before I add my ER. big to bigger. While I'm adding this to our chart, will you think about some words that you might want to explore that might have that 1, 1, 1 pattern while I add this to our chart? Maybe you came up with the word hot, right? Maybe you use this word sometimes in your informational writing. If you're writing a how-to about how to cook something, you might say, make sure that the batter is nice and hot. Okay, let's take a look at hot. If I want to turn hot into hotter, what would I have to do? Right, I'd have to double that T. Right? Double that last consonant, because hot has one syllable, one vowel, and it ends in one consonant. So when that happens with the root word, I double the T. So hot becomes hotter. What about the word sad? Right? I was sad when I dropped my ice cream cone, but I was even sadder when my friend moved away. How would I turn sad into sadder? You're right, I would double the D, because sad has one syllable, one vowel, and one consonant. Okay? So when you're working with words, pay attention to what's happening with the root word, because sometimes that can give you some clues as to how the root word might change a little bit when you add that ER suffix. So if you have a word that ends in a single consonant, like wet or big or hot, you just double that last consonant before you add the ER. Sad and sadder. So today and every day when you're spelling and you're working with those ER suffixes, you come to words you're not quite sure about, just take a look at the root word. If the root word ends in a Y, drop the Y, add an I and ER, like early to earlier. If the word has one syllable, one vowel, and one consonant, just double that final consonant before you add ER. And we'll take a look at our last spelling pattern.